video blog coming back from Crime 101. Good movie. In movie land, it's a good ending. But make no mistake about it, that's a movie land ending. In real life, they're all scumbags. So let's separate fantasy from reality. It did make me cry at certain places in the ending. It was touching. But I related to things in my life. Things I miss. Not touching because of them. Touching because of the note it strikes within me. Love and loss. And then the second chance. These are all things that I was hoping for with Jen. I was hoping she would change her mind. All she had to do is say, let's try again. I asked her, I said, I want to be together again. She actually never answered that question. And that was early on after we broke up. And she never answered the question. I literally asked her, I want to be boyfriend and girlfriend again. And she didn't answer the question. But the movie, it has nothing to do with judging the morals in the movie. Because the morals, all those characters are scumbags. Threatening people's family, doing armed robbery and threatening their life at gunpoint. Even if you don't hurt anyone, you're a big scumbag. You use extreme duress. You threaten their life at gunpoint. You threaten to hurt their family. You're not a good person. But the movie strikes notes in people about things, and they show, struggling as a poor boy and all that. Those themes, when you fight the good fight, even in a bad character, it strikes you and the struggles you went through. And so it releases your inner feelings. Not because you feel for the character, because you feel for your plight and your struggles. And so all they're doing is bringing up that struggle with inside you and tapping into that emotion, which the movie was very entertaining. But see, true people will tell you, and as you should tell your kids, who they truly are. Don't fantasize them. I've been against, bada bing, what was it called? The James Gandolfini and his thing. And they romanticize their struggles and their plights. But they forget about who they are and what they do. They're pieces of garbage. They're pieces of filth. But those good struggles, those things you fighting the good fight, tap into good people. And so it strikes chords in you and drives your emotions for your struggles, your challenges, your plights. And it takes out all the evil. All you're recognizing is these things where you feel you've been unjust. That's why the Dirty Harry movies of the 70s, and then Charles Bronson and him and Clint Eastwood, those two actors were huge in the 70s, the most violent decade in United States history. And people recognized being mugged. How many times have I had guns pointed at me and pointed at my head? And other times, truly, people have stolen things. One of my Ross's friends stole from my apartment. I was helping him out, letting him stay there, being good to him, meaning the night. And he stayed and he stole my sunglasses, a $400 pair of sunglasses. Matsuda, Japanese designer. Very expensive sunglasses. I never could afford them. It was a one-time thing. And he stole them. And I asked Ross to get them back. Your friend, you know him, you know how to contact him, tell him to give me those back. And Ross told me no. That shows me character. And I told Ross, he's your friend, your responsibility, and he scummed me. I want my shit back. If it was my friend, and he did that to one of my friends, and they called me and told me, I'd be knocking on their door. And if I had to kick the shit out of them, so be it. But they would be coughing it up. And they would be apologizing. Make me look like a scumbag. I would have a heart-to-heart with them. You don't think that happens? My brother did that with Scott one day. And Scott went aggressively towards my brother. And they grew up as best friends. And Carl hit Scott. Knocked him out. Carl's fought in the Golden Gloves. That's where I started boxing for his Golden Gloves training. But he dropped him and knocked him out. Scott needed to learn a lesson. And the lesson was heated, meaning he understood. He didn't make that mistake again. But the whole point in these things is you're not feeling for the character. You're feeling for yourself. Any book creates a great connection. It bridges the gap towards you. So even in a dirtbag character, there can be qualities that you connect to. So that's what they're wrong about. It's like when you have sexual desires and you have sex on the screen, and this is what they don't understand. It's still, how do you say, enticing. Because you're human and it's a sexual action. You say, oh, well, they're doing it immorally. But the brain doesn't govern that. The frontal lobe does, but not the subconscious in that way. And the subconscious gets stimulated. And you feel something. It doesn't mean you're evil. It doesn't mean it at all. I went through all this, and I understand. But also, I suppress and understand that that feeling is inappropriate. I recognize the feeling, I acknowledge the feeling, and also I tell my mind that that's inappropriate. I censor myself. So I don't move forward with it. I govern myself and tell myself that's immoral sexual conduct. And I train my brain. This is why we have a conscious and subconscious. And it's a constant dialogue between the conscious and subconscious. You're training both sides. And I understood this a long time ago. And so when you feel inappropriate, you have to have internal talk. And if somebody feels these feelings, which they do, the feelings aren't inappropriate. And this is what I told people. It's what you do with the feelings or information that matters. That's why Dexter I like, because he had the code. So when you get these feelings or urges, it's training yourself to move through them in the proper manner. So I censor myself. That's inappropriate sexual action. I would never want to hurt like Jen. I would never want to do that to a female partner. I would never want to do that to a woman. Or I would never want to do that to a friend. So I have an internal compass. As Jesus explained, he's 100% human. And there is in Romeo and Juliet, where Romeo suffers and he says, "Do I not bleed? If you do this to me, if you do that to me, do I not hurt?" I feel these things. But he also, Shakespeare communicates, it's what I do with these feelings that matter. That I maintain honor and dignity. And that I fight the good fight. That I take this in and I respond appropriately. So again, Facebook I hate. I hate social media censoring. When you're posting on your own page, you say hate speech. Well, how do you get out the hot air? And this is part of the First Amendment. You're not supposed to incite, but you're allowed to express your anger. And so you're allowed to channel that anger in a way that you deem that's appropriate in ways. And there is appropriate. So me lashing out on social media, no one has to read anything I post. No one has to watch any video. You can skip it over. You can turn it off. You can delete it from your whatever. You have free will. When I tag you on that, you don't have to accept. You can reject the tag. You can delete the information. What do we do in financial planning? We send out to everybody. We opt everybody in with the emails. And I've taken phone calls telling people, take me off of your distribution list. I said, in big letters at the bottom, it says opt in, opt out. It's 2 big buttons that you get to opt in, opt out, and you can opt out. Every one comes with an opt out. You can opt out at any time. So the first one comes with an opt in, opt out. After the first one, if you don't do anything, by default, it opts you in. So it sends you, but every time it has, if the big bottom, you see it right at the bottom, and I made sure it was there, opt out. Single click. You can cancel receiving with 1 click. Because it's very hard to go through and sit there and call everybody and ask them for permission. But it's very easy for them to press a button. So they opt everybody in until they opt out. And they make it, the first one is opt in or opt out. And if you don't do anything, it defaults to opting in. And it continuously, you have the opt out after that. So at any time you press a button, but people call me, get me off your distribution list. Like Costa did this when I was sending out Susan G. Komen. And I was put him on my distribution. He said, stop sending me this shit. I said, there's an opt-out button right at the bottom. You could have just pressed it. You didn't need to call me. It's a, big button. It has to be very big, very visual, in yellow, in clear letterings, very big. It's a big button. You can't make it small. It's got to be big. Very easy to see. And so I removed him. And people called me and had me remove them. And I obliged. But this is the point. Like a girl I went to the University of Chicago with and who I was friends with. She threatened me. If you don't remove me, I'm going to report you to the blank, blank, blank. You're going to what? I said, there's an opt-out. It's at the bottom. You could have just asked me to remove you. This is our first conversation. Like this piece of shit fucking tailgating fucking motherfucker supposed to be 6 car lengths behind me. Fucking scumbag piece of garbage. And that's why we have so much violence in this country. People refuse to comply. I don't give a shit about the insurance company. I give a shit about right and wrong in life. And when you break the rules, you threaten life. He's supposed to be minimum 6 car lengths. At 55 for every 10 miles an hour. Trucks, even more. But here's another piece of shit flying up on my ass. And in a righteous, I get to blow his brains out. Fuck you! But this is what the government's supposed to be doing. Where are all the state troopers? Since people don't, and this is the problem people don't understand, the New Testament compared to the Old Testament, the spirit of the law. The New Testament says, either you self-regulate or you die. You don't need the authorities. And if you don't self-regulate, you burn in hell. You have to sanctify yourself through your righteous actions. And if you don't self-regulate, you die. You turn away from sin. See, God gave even more free will. Before, it was strict. And you needed lots of government oversight. Truly. And the angels came down in Sodom and Gomorrah and killed them all. See, that's the difference between the New Testament and the Old Testament. The New Testament ends in Revelations, where everybody is finally judged. And God kills all those that don't self-regulate. That you don't adjust your sins. That you keep up doing the same evil shit like tailgating. You don't back off and keep your distance. That makes you very evil. Like another tailgater behind me. Look at this. Right there, right on my fucking ass. That lane is wide open. But they stay here. They have no right to threaten me with their vehicle. Fucking pieces of shit. Scumbag! See, the Bible says self-regulate.
What the fuck you say?
What the fuck you say? Yeah, whatever, you trash. Fucking pieces of garbage. See? That's what you don't understand. Garbage. So, the New Testament says there is no heaven. You sell out to the government, you sell out to cops and that. You do the wrong thing, you burn. If you need them to regulate yourself, you die. Jennifer Kim and me understood that. She understood what I preach. Self-regulation. She didn't need a cop to tell her shit. She didn't need an authority looking over her shoulder, looking at her house, going through her stuff. She did everything morally. It's like several others I've been with. They self-regulate. See, the difference between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant, and this is what the Jews don't understand, God created a higher thing. And if you look under democracy, we give freedom until you violate the law. And once you violate the law, we take freedom away. And then we put you on a record. And I don't believe in expunging people's record. They go on the blacklist forever. So I never asked once for anything with my DUIs that I got, or anything to be expunged. Permanently on my record. So, same. So everybody knows what you've done. I had to explain this when I got hired at Financial Truly. What happened, when it was, but it was only during one period, 1999. And I had lots of reasons why I was feeling incredibly depressed. But those incidents weren't me. Some mother begged me, Mark's friends, 2 Marks Mark and Kelly, I should say. This mother, I meet for the first time, we're doing karaoke and everything. I live down the street. I just want to go home. I got to walk my dog. More than 2 hours, he sat there begging me. I told him, be an adult. You got a house. You got credit. You got money. Take a cab home. I live so far out. The cab ride will be so expensive. And this is why God said, I can't forgive you anymore. Because I caved. And I gave him a ride home. And from that, I ended up getting 2 DUIs the same night. Because the cops are supposed to keep me in the drunk tank. They let me out before I was sober. They didn't breathalyze me again. They violated. And when I got out, I got pulled over again and got a second DUI. I was just going home. None of it was my fucking fault. But it was. But the 2 other guys that it was his friend wouldn't take responsibility for him. Kelly and Mark refused to drive him home because it was in 45 minutes to an hour. That's a 2-hour round trip from where I was. Hour out, hour back. I lived like 10 minutes away. And I did need to walk my dog. I don't lie about anything. And I said I was too drunk to drive. I told him repeatedly, I'm too drunk to drive. I'm too drunk to drive. I'm too drunk to drive. But people just screw me because they want to get what they want. And this is where God came to a conclusion about you all. You lie to me, you steal from me, He doesn't care if it's the U.S. military or cyber crime units or criminal justice. He doesn't give a shit their excuse. They take from me and do not better my life and pay me and give me what I deserve. They all burn. He doesn't care about U.S. security or anything else. He cares about righteousness and justice. And if they're going to use it, they have to pay me. And they have to make my life better. So that means they got to take out all the scumbags and 86 them. And I truly mean destroy them. That's what breaking them is. What do you think hell is? Since you couldn't break, you didn't change, and you stayed with sin, well, now God doesn't give you anymore. He just beats you, and he doesn't care anymore if you break. Bridge too far. No redemption. That's the point of Judas. He gave him 11 other people, including Jesus, 12 others. No, 11, minus Judas. So, anyways, Judas is 12 others. Yeah, 13. So, 12 others. He gave them all that, and they tried and tried and tried. And he didn't break until after he had Jesus killed, which was the domino effect for the rest of them. So, the whole point is, God doesn't care. Either you self-regulate, and he watches it, as he said he would sit back and watch your interaction with me. And if you don't self-regulate and you sin against me, you burn. You prove you have no ability to be just and righteous. This country, this state, this county, this municipality. And that's what those two black girls show me. They have no ability to improve themselves, to self-regulate. So they're disgusting pieces of filth to God, and they burn. There's a big difference between the Old Testament and New Testament. And that's why the Founding Fathers based the Constitution on the New Testament, giving you this ability to comply willingly. And if you don't comply willingly, then we take you out. So you get the choice to comply willingly. That's why we have resisting arrest. You can comply willingly, and if you refuse, then they're allowed to use force. That's the point of it. But black people don't understand that. As they get me in the middle of the shower, soaping up after some Hispanic guy comes across and threatens me, and then his kid threatens me too. I got two, and I never moved towards them, and I went into my place. And then they come on property, and then they bring 5 Hispanic police officers with them, and then they knock on my door while I'm showering, and I'm running late for something, an appointment, and I'm cleaning, and then they say they know who I am at the door. I said, how do you know what unit I was in and who I was? Because we saw the video. Really? You saw my face on the video? Yes, we took the image from the video. We searched the DMV database. We did a match for who you were. And so that's how we knocked on your door. Then they ordered me to go out and get my driver's license or state ID to further identify myself. Hold it. You told me you took my image, you searched the database, and you know who I am, and you're knocking on the door, and I identified myself as Michael Olson. But now you want me to put on my clothes, go out, and get my ID, further alienating me. So I comply and give them my ID. And then they have a show of force. They go from 5 to 7 police officers. 7 police officers, just one of me, and now there is 7 of them. 5 Hispanics, 2 whites. Threatening me, staying in close proximity to me. Their show of force with guns and tasers, bulletproof vests, and I got nothing. 0, nothing. And they keep on pressing their force, their superiority, their authority. And then they give me a ticket. And the Hispanic, I want a counter charge. They don't give me a counter charge. They don't write him up for threatening me, coming across as the aggressor, coming to attack me. He came across to attack me, and then his son lunged at me, said it was his son. And again, both of them highly physically aggressive. I was angry going to the trash. I walked straight to the trash. I didn't deviate and walked straight back to my unit. And I didn't deviate. And he kept on telling me to come over, and I said no. Then he came all the way across to where I was. Him and his son both threatening me. And they give me a ticket, and I have to go to court. Now, they dismissed it, but why wasn't he locked up? He physically threatened me. And I wasn't exactly talking to him. I was just pissed. He was at the door, and he turned around. He could have just opened the door and went in. He would have heard another word I said. But he decided to turn around and attack me, just like the kid at Wingstop and all these Hispanic. The Hispanic guy pulls up next to me. I'm angry in my car. He rolls down his window and says shit to me. And then he throws a bottle at my car, just missing me, and turns away. But they've been doing this, black and Hispanic people, continuously for the last 10 years. Aggressors hitting me with their cars. The Hispanic guy hit me on the highway. Hit me twice. He hit the person behind me and then went straight through and hit me. And then he denied and said, I'm not drunk. I didn't hit you. It wasn't me driving. I asked him if he was all right. I didn't even ask him if he was driving. And I said, you didn't come from that car up there? No. But then he walked back and got in the car and drove away. But he offered it up and said, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do anything. I didn't hit you. And the black cop, he didn't breathalyze him. He didn't take any crime scene evidence. He didn't do shit. And I get to watch them walk around here with girlfriends, holding hand in hand, enjoying their life, living in the city, and have everything at their disposal. Walk out the door, and they got this here, there. They don't have to. Everything is convenient for them, right at their footstep. Me, I live 35, 45 minutes outside the city for the last 20, going on 21 years. They get here. They give them housing vouchers. They feel sorry for these pieces of shit, and they are low-life pieces of shit. And they feel sorry. But going back to it, God already made a judgment, and I told you this. I can't forgive you. Once you do a crime against me, the Father's going to end you. As he said, he will have no forgiveness for you. Once you injure me, mentally or physically, you perish in eternal damnation. Because he watched me. I had black guys threatening to kill me and everything else all that time, doing all things, stealing from me. Oh, yes. And many other things. They stole all the shit in my export locker, my this, that, you name it. And I'm working at Urban Ministry and donating to Pacific Gardens and helping the Salvation Army. I donated tons to them for their shelter. And this is all blacks. And they're screwing me, threatening me, cheating me, lying to me, stealing from me. So God said, there is no more forgiveness for them. Now, if you hurt me, you just die. You keep on saying, it's out. You think differently. You think you're there. But I told you, it's self-accountability. And you violated the covenant. And so you die. There is no possible forgiveness for you. So I don't know what pastor is telling you or priest is advising you, but you're going to burn in hell. And you keep on thinking you can repeat these sins and do this. He doesn't give a shit about this black guy over here. Where is his own people? Since the Great Migration, millions of blacks, they brought their fucking disgusting filth here. I grew up with no homeless people. And as you go around here, it's black people not being scumbag homeless in their neighborhood, but coming down to where white people live and walking the streets and begging white people for money. And then they call them racist. And they call them all kinds of disgusting, as they did to me at Starbucks. They called me cheapo. All the black guys, I'm going to study for my exams and trying to better my life. And I'm investing all my money into my education and self. And they go in and they beg and they give them Starbucks coffee and Starbucks food. And they buy it with other people's money. They just sit there and beg for it. Like, I always hated the holding up of the finger like this at the Dead concert. Can I get a miracle? Freaking scumbagging, lying, cheating, stealing filth. And they were. And they hold up, can I get a miracle? And somebody will be like, oh man, here dude, I know what it's like not to be able to go to the Dead concert. Here's a ticket, dude. And these people peddle drugs and do all kinds of things. And I watched them steal and everything else. And they play on your sympathy. As my girl from South Africa said. She said, black people have continuously played on white guilt. And she said, when does white guilt end? And when is it self-accountability for black people? And black people accounting for their own people? Why is it always white people's problems that black people are screwed up pieces of shit? Truly, white people have to take care of their own screwed up. Like my friend Mike Whitehead. He was a drug addict and everything else. And his father had to take care of him. And tried to help. And I did. But the funny thing is, white people get all their fucked up. And now they're responsible for the fucked up Hispanics, the fucked up blacks, the fucked up Asians, which are not many, thank God. Because it would just add to the misery for white people. And you say, this is racism. This isn't racism. This is truth. And then instead of the Arabs that I work with trying to help their own community, they're giving to black people. They're preparing food and donating to black people. And they're ignoring their own internal. And then I watched it. Everybody giving to black people. And feeling sorry. All the Asian churches. all across the board giving to black people. Where are the black churches? And I said this for decades and decades and decades. Why aren't I here with a bunch of black churches, black youth, the urban ministry, meaning, I shouldn't say urban ministry, and that's started by a white lady to end violence in the black community. But I wrote out to Shaq and others in the black community, start taking care of your responsibilities of the garbage in your community. But somehow the garbage in their community is everybody else. So, and I'm speaking from how you see these groups. And I understand by talking to them. They say, well, we have these issues in our community and we're struggling with our youth. I was talking to farmers, and it's all white community, and they were struggling with crystal meth and that in their community. As one of the girls who was my client, a lady, her daughter OD'd. And what did they do with her body when she overdosed? They didn't call the paramedics. They were scared when she overdosed. They didn't know how to do CPR. Why wouldn't you teach drug addicts how to do safe CPR just in case somebody overdoses? Why wouldn't you be offering them free classes? I wouldn't want to be locking them up. I want them to save the life. So learn how to do CPR, learn how to protect each other, and teaching them how to watch out for overdose, how to watch out for bad drugs or tainted drugs. I would give them free testing kits. Testing kits to test the heroin for fentanyl or rat poisoning. Do you know? And this was mainly, from my understanding, black people were cutting with kitchen common, I think it was, cocaine and other things, cocaine and heroin and that, with comet, and then they were using rat poisoning, I think, because it was white, and they were cutting it with so they could make more, and so they were poisoning their own people. These are the ethical, So they were cutting it and tainting it. I would give them free testing kits. Truly, if I had charities or working with them, I would giving them free testing kits. Here's a free heroin testing kit. Here's a free cocaine testing kit. I want you to quit. I want you to move away, but also I don't want you ODing. I understand you have a problem and an addiction. And so I'll give you these testing kits because all the opium overdoses where they had the tainted heroin in Chicago and all those people, and the girl talked about chasing the dragon, and they think they're going to get it right because they want the opium so badly that even if it potentially could kill them, they still do it. But they're not sure. They think if they cook it correctly, they can burn off the fentanyl. But the thing is, does fentanyl get removed under heat first? See, each has a different sensitivity to heat. And so the opioids might be more heat sensitive. And so what happens is they have a stronger going from liquid to gas and dissipate faster, and now you're left with greater concentrations of fentanyl. I don't know, but I would assume that fentanyl is not as heat triggered or sensitive as the opioid. The opioid turns the gas faster and the fentanyl doesn't, and this is why they OD. When they cook it, it doesn't burn off. They get left with more concentrated fentanyl. But do they say this? Truly. Do they teach people this? Look, this is the fire station, and here's the white line. I can't pull up there. It is prohibited. So the sensors are supposed to be back here. Because if I pull up there, they might open the door and go to emergency, and I'm blocking their space. Anyone in this space should automatically get a ticket. That camera should give you a ticket. When there's a red light, you automatically get a ticket. You drive in this, they ticket you. And if those doors open and you're here blocking, so even in the greatest of traffics, when the streets are out, you have to be behind that line. They have to have clear way. Even in rush hour traffic and that, you can't cross the line. But here in the city of Chicago, they don't force anything. Enforce shit. They're just a bunch of scumbags, the aldermen, truly, their assistants, they're just a bunch of scumbags. So it starts with the mayor. He's the lead scumbag. So again, I say, with fentanyl, is it more or less heat sensitive? And if it's less heat sensitive, then you end up with heavier levels of fentanyl, less heroin, and they overdose because they cook it. Now, they snort it. So they're not cooking it. But if they vape it, well, that's a problem with vaping. Because can you use heroin? If they cook it, when they cook it, do you know they take the powder and turn it into a liquid by cooking it? They liquefy it. And then once you liquefy it, you can put it in a vaping and you can breathe in heroin. And that's what they do. It's just like cocaine they put on the end of the cigarette. Cocoa Puffs. Just like PCP, they lace the marijuana with PCP, angel dust. And they turn it into a gas. They cook it and turn it into a gas. And that gas gets into the blood faster. It penetrates the lungs at a rapid pace. More rapid than the solid. And it entering and you get higher and people overdose. But they get messed up really quick. So they use cigarettes as a pathway and they dump, as Ray Carabata showed me. I never knew what a Cocoa Puff was. And he used to dip the tip of his cigarette in cocaine and then light it and then breathe it in. I tried one drag. But it's very potent. But I didn't know what a Cocoa Puff was. There's another scumbag. And no one goes to jail in the city. It's a do what you want, whenever you want. And they're all just scumbags. But they don't teach people this. I started out in college with chemistry background, but I've been doing chemistry since I've been a child. Do you know that? I've been studying gases and plasmas and all this. I'm a very advanced chemist. Truly, I study heavy water and how to make it and you name it. I have immense capability. But that was supposed to bring me a good life. Not a life of poverty and thirst, not a life of pain and suffering, but a life lacking the need for anything, because I could get anything I wanted anytime I wanted it, including, as my ex said, sex is yours. Anytime you want it, it is there. You tell me what you want me to do. And she did say that. And she's not the only one. Your command, I will fulfill. You tell me exactly what you want. But she isn't the only girl. But I only do things that are just and moral. I don't sodomize. I don't hurt them. I only do things that's mutually beneficial. And if it's not mutually beneficial, then I don't do it. Because why would I want to desecrate them? Then I would be satanic. Masochistic is when you do it to yourself. But I would be a satanic piece of shit doing something that would harm them and satisfy me. That's why I don't take any pleasure in kicking somebody's butt, and I've been doing it since I've been a kid. And I didn't say, yeah, this is great, this is awesome. I took no joy out of it. It was a necessary evil. But I consider it a necessary goodness, because they had to physically be broken. Some people need to physically be broken. That's why we have jail. And the people that can't be physically broken, we have life in prison, but also we are afraid of them tainting others. So we have the electric chair, because they can't be broken. So, and we can't have them infect others, stay in prison and preach their garbage. So we execute them. Truly, Charles Manson, as I was shocked with the prison authority, he had all these girlfriends writing him, and you can look it up, and telling him how much they loved him and everything else, and he was able to write them, and he had all these female pen pals. And he was preaching his ideology as he had those other women kill the pregnant woman and the guy and so on. It's interesting. So, Sambar has a big Asian crowd. 2 forms, like I said, I'm by it. Downstairs, Indian. Upstairs, Chinese and Korean and Vietnamese. Truly, you would say West Asia and East Asia. And because of the Himalayas, they don't really have a lot in common, culture-wise. Their dishes are different. They eat rice, but not in the same way. So they don't really blend. I hung out with Indians, and we didn't hang out with Asians. I hung out with Asians, and we didn't hang out with Indians. Why? Because there's nothing. That Himalayas, that barrier, allowed the cultures not to really ever interact. They were independent of each other. And so you have upstairs Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, and all that, because they intermixed in trade, because they were all on the oceans by there. You go to India, it's around in the Indian Ocean, not the Chinese Sea. And it's, you gotta go through, I think, Malaysia, there's a strait, and it's more complicated. So they've been isolated. So they didn't grow up together. They didn't interact, nor it protected India from ever being invaded by the Japanese or the Chinese. India, its isolation in that way prevented it from being exposed to dominant Asian nations thinking they might invade India. So, in one way, it was good for their protection. So they didn't get involved in World War II in the Pacific theater, really. So it kept them out of all that crisis, really. But the thing is, they also have been so filthy and disgusting that their leadership and their people have not pulled themselves out of poverty. Great failure on their part. So China has an economy equal size population. China's economy is 5, 6, 7 times greater than India's. Trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions more than the Indian economy. So, again, they don't really interact. It's like all of Jen's friends. We had one Indian girl lived across from us. We had all kinds of other Asians, but not Indians and Pakistanis. That's on their side. But I'm just saying, these natural borders. It's like I go to Carroll Streams. They have a big Indian population, but they don't have a big Chinese population or Asian population, Koreans or anything. Koreans are in Niles and Skokie and other places, but they're not by the Indian population at all. They don't reside together. So, again, it's a little bit different. But getting back to it, I would be working with those charities giving out free testing kits. And I would do education and not telling them the chemistry, just telling them when they cook and there's fentanyl in the opium, or there's other tainted things, those other tainted chemicals might not be as heat sensitive. So when you cook the heroin, so you can inject it or now vape it, which I would use a vape because it turns into a liquid. I cook it, turn it into liquid, and then I pour it right in the vape and smoke the heroin. Because they don't have anything to prevent that. There's no chemical sensing in the vapes, where if you use anything but approved, it doesn't work. It doesn't have safety. But this is why I was big in miniaturization. They have little smart chips that can go in there. Tiny, super little chips that are dirt cheap that can go in there and do a certain type of processing or spectrum analysis, and the system won't work. Now, somebody might go through and figure out and recode a chip and so on. Yeah, but they're going to have to put a lot of effort into it. And that means they're going to have resources from computer programmers to material, chip material, and everything else. So that makes them easy to track. So that's why estate planning, you put things into trust. It doesn't mean you can't be sued and they can't get awards. It just makes it harder for the bad guy, has to jump through many, many hoops. And this is a vetting. So only those that truly deserve it get it. And that's the way trusts were set up, because too many people could make claims against you and get money too easily. And so the trust makes them jump through many, many hoops to be able to even get access to the money. And that means they have to go through an extreme vetting process, because the trust gets lawyers and so on, and they have to further substantiate, and it's a much higher burden. So asset protection is there to prevent the wicked from fleecing the righteous, because you can't put in anything in asset protection that comes from illegal funds. That money violates the covenant of the trust or any asset protection. If you put money, illegal money, in a 401k or IRA, you can pull it out. The government can take it out. If they can prove it's from an illegitimate source, it can all be removed, even the earnings. They should have never had it. So you can take it all. You can talk to Rick. We talked about this, the clawback. You can't put anything illegally. So if you didn't declare your money as an Asian businessman, say, and you put that money in a retirement account, all that money can be pulled out. The IRS can take it out, fines and penalties, and put penalties from trying to defraud your creditors by trying to use asset protection schemes as tax shelters or shelters against your creditors who have charged you criminally, even the IRS or the government. I don't have any money. I have my only money in the 401k. Well, if you were doing illegal actions at that time, that money is not protected in the 401k. And so they take the time period and look at it, and they say, he did this. So all those contributions, when you did that illegal act, is not protected. Neither is the earnings. And they can pull that out. See, you can only be just and righteous to get protection. That's how it's set up. So it doesn't protect C corporations, LLCs, criminals. They void the covenants of the structure. And so when you do criminal actions, you're fully exposed. Just like tailgating in that with insurance. You have duties, and if you violate the duty, it doesn't cover you. So these pieces of shit, and then they'll talk back. They're tailgating and wronging you. And they're doubling down on their evil by opening their mouth. And may God cut out their tongue. May they lose their voice. Oh, that's right. We have gag orders. And that means if you open your mouth, you go to jail instantly. It is a violation of the court. And you're held in contempt. And they can hold you there literally indefinitely. So we have gag orders, and you violate the gag order, they put you right in jail. You do not pass go, and you immediately go to jail. You already got the warning with the gag order. And so if you say something back to me, you should be put in jail immediately. I should be free to curse anyone I want out. And if they open their mouth, they go to jail immediately. When you have orders of protections, like a gag order, and they violate it, they go to jail immediately. Just doing the action is all they need. They need nothing more. They just have to show you did the action. And once you did the action, you're gone. That's it. So you open your mouth and say something to me, you should be locked up immediately, and then if you're an immigrant, deported from this country immediately. No second chances. You've been warned when you came in, and then you opened your mouth and got the gag order. And then you violated that. You're gone. So, again, getting back to this, educating them, like the Clean Needle program, I understood it. But also, there's a trade-off. You got to sit in and do some education. I'll give you the needles. That's what they do in Great Britain sometimes, the diversion program. You have to go through counseling and stay in counseling. And they'll give you the heroin, but they have random inspections of where you live, and you have to stay in counseling. And in turn, they want you to get off the drug. But as long as you maintain a good residence and life and don't do crimes, they give it to you for free, but you have to attend your meetings. And they don't give up on you. They're using it as a bridge, hopefully, to eventually you have a come to Jesus moment and are able to taper down and clean yourself up. But it's to make sure you don't get tainted drugs and overdose. And so they know how much they're giving you and everything else, and they can monitor your health. They can monitor your health. It's a diversion program, and you can't be busted by the police. You know that? You can't go to jail for using. Now, there's appropriate places, and if you start cooking heroin in a bathroom and shooting up inappropriately, well, then you can go to jail. But if you do it in the privacy of your own residence and so on, you do it in the appropriate places, and I don't know what they consider appropriate, you can't go to jail. The police can't arrest you. You're legally allowed to use drugs. It's a prescription. And you have a legal prescription for that heroin. It's like medical marijuana. In places where marijuana was illegal, but the thing is, they faked the glaucoma and everything, and the system was one big fraud. It was a fraud. People lied. They faked their illnesses to get the medical marijuana, and there was a whole industry, illegal industry, of giving out fake illnesses, prescribing it to people that had fake illnesses so they could just get high. So they didn't have glaucoma or any medical necessity. And so there was a whole black market in California. You have to read back. I study all this before I open my mouth. And all these people had these cards, and the police couldn't arrest them for smoking and getting high, but they had no medical necessity. So the majority of them didn't need it. It was just a bubble. And that's why you have to recertify. But the whole point is, I'll go straight. The whole point is, it was there to solve a problem that people had medical necessity, and the doctor prescribed it and they really needed it. The police couldn't arrest them for having marijuana. It's the same thing they do. They can't arrest you for having opium. But you only can carry so much. They give you a quantity. They record everything they give you. And you have to come back weekly. I don't know if they do daily. I knew they did weekly. And you get so much to carry you through a week. And they don't allow you to increase your addiction. The point is not to make it stronger. The point is to allow it to take off the edge so you don't have this burning desire. So they give you enough to keep the edge off, to keep you stable and functional. You ever heard of a functional alcoholic? It's the same thing. The DDTs, they're true. My brother went through them, withdrawal. You can't just stop as an alcoholic cold turkey. If you're truly drinking heavy, you're a heavy drinker consistently, you'll get the DDTs. So they have to taper you off. They can't go cold turkey. That's like heroin, they give you methadone. But some people can't handle the methadone, truly. And you can't substitute from the heroin to the methadone. So they have to make a medical decision, but they're also watching you medically, making sure things aren't getting worse for you. The program is not to be satanic and destroy them. The program is try to figure out how to get them healthy. The program is hoping that eventually one day you may have this ability to come clean. But the whole part of it, you can't go to jail. And that's a big thing for users. And so they don't get a criminal record. They don't have to go and break into places to steal things to get their heroin. So it was to deter crime. It was. To stop overdoses, to stop people stealing to feed their addict, to stop dirty needles and the spread of all kinds of contagious diseases, infectious diseases. It's a means to an end, but not the end itself. The end itself is sobriety. The goal always is sobriety. But they also understand that some people may never reach sobriety. But it's not for not hoping. But God has done tens of thousands of years and everything, hoping that you would learn and repent. So, getting back to the Bible, the New Covenant, they don't explain this in church. It's all about self-control. I published on Tumblr Paul talking about it. And it's self-controlled. And it's opposite of the Old Testament. So that's why they say by not works alone. And they mix it up. Because in the Old Testament, it was by works. Not coming to Jesus, not by the blood of Jesus, but by works alone. And Jesus was having a conversation with the Pharisees. But the thing is, works give you sanctification. It didn't remove it. But you have to be Team Jesus. And when you do that, you have to love God. See, part of it is the God first premise. And so if you act against God, then you don't love God. So if you go in and desecrate a shrine, or you desecrate this or that, then you prove through your acts that you don't love God, that it's just lip service, and that somehow you're trying to be the great trickster, like Satan and the demons. They deceive you. You're not going to deceive God. He knows what's in your heart. He knows your true essence. So you're not going to lie to him and deceive him. I used to tell this to people in church. You can go through the motions, but the motions don't do you any good if you don't apply it. And if you don't think sanctification works, well, I'm telling you, it does. If you're a non-believer in Jesus, you still just perish. You will not be content. And I had to understand that good people don't go to hell. They're not condemned. You are not required to commit to Christ. You're required to be righteous and just. And so if you're righteous and just, then you will not perish and you rejoin the universe. But if you want to be part of Team Jesus and you want to join his group, like you join a group on Facebook, and you want to be part of that group, then you commit to him. But if you act against him, then you're condemned. That is the mutiny, as the Bible shows you, with Satan against God. And all those that acted against were condemned. So I laugh. Your actions against me, he will condemn you. And you can't stay with the status quo. The Bible tells you, if you don't repent and move away from sin, and you create a proxy war, all those involved will be condemned. So you can't run a shadow war against me. You can't fake and lie. You all will be perished. So I laugh. You think you're winning. No, I just see more and more people dying every day, like this person. It's a city street. You're not supposed to go racing around the city. This is not a country road. Do you know not all country roads have speed limits? Especially private roads on farms and that. Now, insurance companies could insist, but people go on farms and they open it up and do 100 miles an hour or whatever, because there's no speed limit. Now, the insurance company could say you're doing reckless driving, meaning you don't get a ticket from the government, but the insurance company to pay the claim could say it's aggressive, serious malice, that you didn't, the policy has a duty in it. And these duties regulate how extreme you can move with action. Like, we have life insurance policies, and if you don't tell them you do mountain climbing and they issue the policy and you die from a mountain climbing accident, then the policy doesn't pay out. It's void. The premium would be much harder. The insurance companies, they're not trying to rip you off. They need to be fair to all the policyholders. And so everybody has to pay based on their burden. And this is where we don't understand that in society. That we keep on saying, that's okay, your burden will be lifted. And so people can do what they want, whenever they want. And here's the charity in to save the day. Here's the government to give them food stamps and Medicaid because they dropped out of school and they chose not to try to clean themselves up in a diversion program and that. And here they are saving the day. When is it enough? When do you have too many chances? Truly, I'm going to go down here. But when do you have too many chances? When do we give up? If you're in the diversion program, that means you're complying. And you're trying. By being in the program itself says that you're putting in an effort, that you're trying to clean up. It might be a minimal effort, but still you're trying. So that shows good faith to the court. So again, it looks at it, and they should do blood sampling too to make sure that the amount of heroin or methadone in your system isn't increasing. Like the medical marijuana, they should drug test as well, making sure you're not doing it just to get high and you're abusing the drug. You're abusing the pharmaceutical. That's what blood tests are supposed to watch for, making sure people aren't abusing the pharmaceuticals. So when a doctor, and this is why I believe, and this is where doctors are wrong, I believe you get full panel, full spectrum screening now. The technology's there, and they can screen for all toxins. So that means they screen for all diseases. Everything is full panel. This way, we know if you get lead poisoning or you have arsenic poisoning, because cadmium and arsenic, which are in but they're in the ground as well, and you could have those and you don't know. But now I put out the systems, and health providers can do full screenings for STDs and for lead and all kinds of things. But also to see if you're abusing Adderall. You might not be prescribed Adderall. It shows up in your system: cocaine, heroin, marijuana, Adderall, illegal, Vicodin, and you're not prescribed it. And it shows up in your blood test. And they have a talk with you. And this is why employer mandated physicals. And I believe it should be government mandated that every citizen, and you can be arrested, that you have to go in annually for your physical. Because what do people do? They try to skate and hide. And this is a way we catch people using illegal drugs in that. But this is how we controlled public health systems. And this is how we recognize and get them health. But also, it creates a very big deterrent. Because if you're going to be forced to do it, and it's your best interest, they're running it to see if there's anything wrong with you. You know, that heroin or something could cause serious liver failure or heart failure or, you know, maybe lung failure or whatever. So again, I believe it should be mandatory. And they run a full spectrum. So they know if a little kid gets exposed to lead, and they can say, oh, your drinking water, your child has lead in the blood. Well, where's the lead coming from? Or they're exposed to this or exposed to that. So it prevents farmers and everybody else. It shows up in the biomarkers. So we should be moving the full... I've been arguing this with doctors, and I paid up for extra panels because STDs were extra panel screens. Did you know that? They don't scan for them necessarily. Well, the technology's there. They can automatically scan for them. But I paid up additionally. At Arizona, when I had all the time, order the extra panels. So, again, it should just be mandatory. So, again, doing these things, but also this is the way we detect people and who's on the illegal drugs, and we offer them diversion programs. And the doctors can offer them diversion programs. But no things of the past, the present. We have to stop the spread of HIV, HIV-2, STDs, other infectious diseases. And we have to be able to track them back. But it makes screenings of people coming into this country very easy too. So, again, lots of positive for lab work. And why the richest society in the history of mankind, and in the history of mankind, is the United States. So you think they would do that. And it is universal where it's mandatory. But I believe you get your insurance primarily through your employer. Through your employer. And then OSHA can get the information for each people that work in industries. To see people working in steel plants. Are certain things showing up in their blood? Truly. So we can track this. So I'm for solving the problem. I'm not saying, oh, I want to feed lawyers all this. There's lots of law you can go into. You can work for the pharmaceutical companies. You can work for the labs and draw up their contracts with the government. It goes out for bidding, how much they get, and so on. So there's lots of diversion programs for lawyers to move them into different fields. So again, I'm not for this wickedness. I'm truly in it to end it. I'm not looking to sustain criminal law. I'm in it to end crime. So if there's no more need for criminal judges and so on and so forth, then so be it. But then you have NCAA violations and many other things that have nothing to do with spreading disease or drugs. This is just making sure people don't get contaminated in the workplace or contract contagious diseases or, get poisoned by drinking water. So there's all kinds of other things outside of that they may do. So it doesn't eliminate, criminal law, but it does get out things that, are major threats to all of society. And so, what do they come down here for? I ask black people, why do you come down into these neighborhoods? Because people feel sorry for me. And I can hand out my cup and they give it to me because I'm a poor black person. So they're milking you. They told me, and the black guy outside of Martini Ranch in the 90s, I asked him, why do you come over here? And I've told this before on Facebook, but I asked him, why do you come to this bar and all the patrons are majority white here? And I said, there's a club right down the street on Chicago. And I said, why don't you go down there and ask them for money? It's a total all-black club right down the street, a couple blocks apart. And he said, those kids would beat the living shit out of me. Over here, they feel sorry for me. Over there, I ask them for $1, they'll kick the living shit out of me. So I come over here because all the white people feel sorry. And what did he give me? He said, I said, give me something that you can earn your money, because I don't want to give you money out of pity. And I want something in trade. And he said, okay, I got a slogan for you. And he said, my favorite nation is donation. And I said, okay, I'm buying this from you. And I gave him the money. And I said, I own that now. That's my property. My favorite nation is donation. He earned his money. And do you know what? I didn't see him anymore outside of our Martini Ranch after that. Because we had a longer philosophical conversation. But also that bar down the street that was all black, it closed because of gun violence. Because they don't check their patient. They don't check their people. They don't screen them well. And so the bar closed down because of gun violence. But my point, even back then, I said, why aren't all these black people, they're going out and buying booze, they're partying, and here you are. Why aren't they giving to you? Why aren't they helping you? So why are you my burden? And he did agree. No, I shouldn't be your burden. Those people should be taking care of me. Those black people. Those black churches and black charities and everything else, like they have the United Negro College Fund, right? I donated to it, and the first money came in, and I posted on Facebook, all the initial funding for the United Negro College Fund, all of it came from white people. And all those black schools came from land grants, and majority of all that money for all those 101 totally black came from white people. Because white people had wealth and they gave, and they figured if black people could get a good education, raise themselves up, that they could contribute and we'd have less problems in society. So altruistic white people saw it as an opportunity to solve a problem, and they were right. I agreed with them funding it and everything. But when do they start taking self-responsibility? And I'm not saying that we can't care for each other as a people, but the whole point is that they don't take any responsibility. And I see all these, and I've never seen any black youth groups or anything. And I came around here from Harvest on 53 in Rolling Meadows. And we came down here to Chicago and prayed for all the homeless people. We gave them a sack lunch, and then we gave them a resource book. And then we asked if we could pray for them, pray they find salvation, find their way off the street. But I was already doing this before Harvest. See, Harvest, what they did wasn't new to me. I was already doing it independently for a long time. But what was better was they had a more formal resource book, but it wasn't like mine. See, mine gave job training, education, many things, rehabilitation clinics, and so on. Theirs just gave shelter and soup kitchens. They weren't trying to solve the problem. They were just giving them a means to carry on their pitiful life. I believe life is a gift and a blessing. So I wanted to bring them out of the horrible situation and get them redeemed and move them up. And so, but it was good. I went down, and all of us, a whole group of white people, we packed on we drove down then to Jefferson Park, and we parked there. And then we took the RTA down here, right here, to the Gold Coast area, and that. We walked all Museum Park, all the way here, Gold Coast, hours and hours of visiting each of the homeless. We ran into a girl. Now, the girl, I was going to offer money. She said she needed money for a phone card. And I was going to give her this. But the guy with me who was leading, he said, no. We'll pray for you. We'll give this and a resource, but we don't give money. But you can talk to these agencies, and we gave her the guide to the shelter net, and they will put her in contact and help her. I haven't seen that white girl since. She was one white girl, and my heart went out because she was pregnant. And she was truly pregnant. And she was a younger white girl, and so I wanted to give a little extra, but he was right. Here's in the resource book, here's the shelter, contact the shelter. But what are the Chicago police giving out? And all those homeless people have to have IDs in that. And they have to be taken in the U.S. Census and be recorded. So all that comes into the population, and where money comes from the federal government. So every homeless person has to be recorded, and every homeless person has to have an ID. It's all part of the census, but these lazy police officers who sit in their car and do nothing disgust me. They have a lot to do. They're supposed to be down here watching if any of these bars, like The Hangover, are releasing anyone in a public intoxication. Public intoxication is illegal. And my people didn't walk staggering and stumbling out of my bars. And they're supposed to see that and go inside and give a warning to the bar about over-serving their patrons, saving them from an incident that person goes out and hurts himself. Because if they stumble and fall and break your wrists, if you over-serve them, guess who they can sue? They can sue the bar, and rightfully so. Because under the liquor license, you have a duty of care. And if you fail to exercise a duty of care and you over-serve them, and those people get injured, riding their bike here or walking and tripping and falling, like Rob Tobler, a friend of mine, did. He came out of a bar, they over-served him, he tripped and fell and broke both his wrists, and he didn't have any type of disability, and it wasn't workman's comp because he was off the clock, but he couldn't work because he's a trader. He's a clerk, really, and he used his hands, so he couldn't really work for I don't know how long, which hurt him financially. But they're supposed to be watching for public intoxication. If people throw garbage here, littering, it's illegal to litter. But they're teaching them to be animals. If I was a doorman and saw you throw something on the ground, I ask you to pick it up, and if not, you're not coming in. You're not bringing your stuff here. If you have trash, we have trash cans you can throw it in. And I'll allow you to throw it in the trash can. But why would you allow somebody who did this? I worked the door. I'd be, bro, you need to pick that up, and we have a trash can, bring it out and throw it away. And if not, you're not coming in. This is right here. It makes it look like the ghetto. And then people in the neighborhood hate this place because of all the filth and the noise. We worked with the buildings, making sure we kept down the noise. Truly. People aren't supposed to be hanging out outside the club unless they're coming in. And if they're out, then they need to keep moving. It's called loitering. So wait for your Uber, get your Uber, and leave. You want to socialize, stay in the club. You get out of here, keep on moving. No loitering. So all these people got to sleep, and especially since most of these people that live here, they're over 50. A lot of them. And so they don't want all this late night noise. River North, I was part of the River North Association. They constantly, residents complained about, my friend that had one, people standing outside and yapping. He should have had his doorman tell him to move along. You can't loiter. Come into the club or get the hell out of here. See, that's the point of loitering and trespassing. So you have to have a purpose where you're going. You can't just stand around. If you want, you can go hang out in the park while they're open. They allow you to sit around and talk in the park because it's away from all the residents. And so it doesn't disturb the peace and tranquility of this and destroy their property value. Truly. So I dealt with this at Baja, Navy Pier. We were off on the pier. We didn't have to worry about residents. But when you're down here, all of these places have a greater responsibility. Go ahead. But you're not allowed to loiter. So people call the cops. Hey, these people are standing outside my window making all this noise, disturbing the peace. And the cops come. My friends worked in Arizona. I was leaving a house party, and the neighbors complained about the noise. My friend Johnny, he's a black guy. He's a black Tucson cop. He was a great friend of mine. He worked out at the gym. We saw eye to eye. As I was walking out, he said, yeah, I'm going in for a noise complaint. And we gave each other a big hug. It was good to see him. I haven't seen him in a long time. But he was a Tucson police officer. Going in and talking to them about the volume. The neighbors want to go to sleep. They want people to quiet down. So disturbing the peace. So they're supposed to be imposing these things. And I don't understand why they're not. And they allow them, and they're supposed to be moving them along. You're waiting for an Uber, and if they watch and you lie, then the cop gives you a ticket for loitering. So again, but if I was running the establishment, and we did, like at Excalibur and that, we didn't have people hang out front. We tell them, hey, you got to break it up. You got to move along, man. Either you're coming in or you're moving on. You're not standing out here and chit-chatting. And if they say, well, we're figuring out where we're going, okay, I'll give you a couple minutes to chat and figure out where you're going, but you got to move along. So again, they're supposed to be controlling the crowd. And all those people on the sidewalk and they're chatting in and throwing, that shouldn't be happening. And they can yank their liquor license, the liquor board. And then the city can yank their business license. So they yank their liquor license, they yank their business license, place is closed. You're out of business. So again, this is the Magnificent Mile. Or is this Chicago's new ghetto? So is it the Magnificent Mile or is it the ghetto? I'm getting conflicting signals with the homeless. The Magnificent Mile or is this the ghetto? And I watch, you say this doesn't happen, I watched Upper Park Avenue in New York as I went in to New York at the beginning of the 90s, mid-90s, early 2000s, mid-2000s, and I watched Upper Park Avenue. No homeless anymore. They cleaned up everything. And Jen noticed that when in the early 2000s they were cleaning up everything in New York, getting rid of the homeless, cleaning up the streets, doing a better job with sanitation because of rodent problems and everything. So they were trying to find solutions. But it seems like Chicago's stuck in the past with no solutions. And I don't understand. So New York real estate goes way up, and this real estate goes way down. And so you have, like here, there's a place upstairs, rooftop with a heart. I went around with Matt and Michael to rooftop bars in New York. Different rooftop bars. For multiple years, I wanted to see their different rooftop establishments. And they have a few with some really good views, as I took some pictures on Facebook. And this is prior to 2016. So, again, I was interested in this. But before that, asked my ex, Jennifer Kim, you don't know. But I went into New York and we used to go in places looking at things. I just wanted to be curious about trend. I was in financial planning. I wanted to see what music was hot, what beverages were hot, what was going on. So unlike Peter Lynch, he didn't go into the food restaurants and that. He went into the malls and looked at shopping habits. I went into nightclubs. I went into pubs. I watched what clothes they were wearing in clubs and pubs. I watched what drinks they were buying, what types of haircut they had. Truly, and if I asked, where'd you get your haircut? Cost cutters, great clips, so on. Truly. So I did this with Jen. I took her in. We used to people watch in the nightclubs. And it was me, and I did it from coast to coast. And also I did it in Mexico at different, and watch what tourists, where they were coming from and so on. Because I was in financial service and in hospitality, and I need to know trends, and I always analyze trends. So I was just being self-aware. We sit down truly and have good times and everything else, but I would notice the things around me It's not like we didn't go out and enjoy and mix with friends and dance and everything else. But also, at the same time, two birds with one stone. And I could have wrote it off as my analyst, truly, as a business expense. R&D, research and development. This is the research part. So going to clubs and nightclubs and restaurants and all that, I write off as a research expense. And while I'm there, I'm trying the drinks, I'm tasting the food, and it's all research for my financial management. And it truly was, and it is tax deductible under research. But I'm truly a financial advisor. And so all of this was research. So people think it's new. I've been doing this forever. So nothing I'm telling you about is something that started in 2016 or started in after my first breakdown. I've been doing all of this my whole life. It's like understanding my relationship with God deeply. See, you think you can hurt me and get away with it, but you violate the new covenant. And that means you can only be condemned. And I pleaded, and I put out an announcement in 2016, and I pleaded, and have been pleading with you, that you can't continue with this, and I'm telling you, there will be no forgiveness. You think you're getting away with it. The Bible tells you if you stay with the status quo. So when you unearth sin, and this is why the Bible tells you, if you unearth sin and you realize that something was desecrating, like your pharmaceuticals were hurting people, not helping people, and you continue to sell that, then you're satanic. You're desecrating the flesh. And so those that run pharmaceutical companies or supplement companies and that, they will burn in eternal damnation. See, desecrating the flesh can be the food is tainted, the drink is tainted. It makes the body sick. It doesn't nourish. It doesn't supply nutrients. As I pray every day, oh, Father, bless this food. May it nourish my mind and body and further carry out your mission on earth. I pray this in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And I pray that at every time I eat, that may this food nourish my mind and body. May that nourishment help me carry out God's work on earth. And I pray this in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. So if you're giving me things that hurt me, you'll be condemned. I don't want to condemn you, but also I don't want you to have any right to hurt me, to desecrate my insides, to pollute me, to poison me. And if you are, you'll be condemned. You're not going to get away with it. He doesn't care if you're selling French fries. If you're desecrating my flesh, that means my internal flesh, my body, you die. See, you think you're getting away with things. You're unrighteous and unsanctified. So even if you don't believe in Jesus, he doesn't care. See, God is an overarching. And so you're not sanctified. And if you're not righteous in God's eyes, you're condemned. You perish. You burn in eternal damnation. So I laugh. I don't care who you believe in. That's up to you. And this is the catch-all, and it's designed to be that way. People keep on thinking they're going to escape their sin. But God watches if you turn away from your sin and repent. And for 10 years, you've been beating on me ruthlessly. You haven't turned away from your sin. You haven't repented. You just stoked the flames with tailgating and hitting me. I mean, it's it's a joke, and threatening me and doing all kinds of evil to me. So I laugh. You're condemned. And all the blind eyes of the government, from the federal, the county, to the state, to the local, and also the blind eyes of international organizations like the United Nations or many others. And you turn a blind eye, like the Red Cross when I give blood. And if they turn a blind eye to anything that's hurting me, they're condemned. There'll be no Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do. You know exactly what you do, and you're held accountable. So the point is, you can't get around God. You might get around me and blind me, but you're not blinding God. So you're just a sucker. Like the police were there to keep the peace and maintain the peace. If they're doing the opposite, then they're the disease and need to go. They're not righteous and sanctified. They're unjust, like the cop that stole in Crime 101. He stole the diamonds. And then he didn't stand up against the dropping of the gun. The gun was in the bag. He took the gun out of the bag and put it in his hand. So he could have used a taser on him. Truly, he could have went and maced him. He didn't have to use lethal force. So you bring a gun to a gunfight. If they don't have a gun, you're an officer. You're supposed to have combat training and everything else. And you're supposed to have backup. And you're supposed to know when you have the proper position, meaning you have the advantage. So you can wait. You have riot gear and other things. They should have the bean bags that go in the shotgun. Do you know shotguns can shoot bean bags? Not just the shotgun shells. And they also can shoot pepper bullets. They go in the shotgun shell and it's just pepper bullets. Little balls of pepper inside instead of pieces of shrapnel. Pieces of metal inside the shotgun. The shell of the shotgun, they have these little round BBs. No. You have the little pepper balls. So it's non-lethal. And they could come out with shotguns that have little rubber balls. Little, like, balls that not even pepper, that hit you and hurt. They bruise the skin. But also, they use shotguns to shoot the bean bags. These are all non-lethal, but pack a serious punch, and those bean bags can break bones. They do serious bruising and can break some bones. But these are non-lethal, so you only bring a gun to a gunfight. And so they're supposed to move with, you can shoot those, the pepper bullets. They used them. They used to use them on the train with the hobos. They had a shotgun and they used the pepper shells and they used them in the shotgun and used to shoot it at the hobos to keep them off the train. So again, they were non-lethal, but they stick in the skin. They burn like a mother. But now you can create all kinds of you can create it with little gas packs, little round balls in the shotgun shell with little beads of chloroform, say. And you hit them with it, and those beads hit and they release the chloroform. Trying to tranquilize them or knock them out. Instead of a injectable Now you have something that goes in, it's a ball, and breaks and releases the fumes inside. So these are all non-lethal forms. So they're only supposed to use lethal when lethal is needed. And usually that means when the other person has a lethal weapon, a gun. So that's why I disagreed with the kid that was shot 16 times with the knife. He brought a gun to a knife fight. He has a shield, meaning they have the riot shields and other things. He has tasers, he has mace. The kid didn't have any protective eyewear on or anything. And still mace goes through the nose and mouth. You breathe it in, so it gags you anyways, even if you have protective eyewear. So again, you don't bring a gun to a knife fight. So they're supposed to use appropriate force, police. So, and you bring outside Buffalo Grove 5 Hispanic cops and 2 white cops, and you're threatening me? Because a Hispanic guy came across and threatened me? I don't get it. I would be dragging that Hispanic guy in for caning. I mean, all these people that have done this shit to me, like this nightclub that used to be down here, the black guy, and then they called me a racist and everything else. You think that, we didn't do that. I've never been at a nightclub, and we had to deal with blacks and Hispanics and Asians and everybody. And not once I had them screaming about not coming in because they weren't dressed appropriately, and I gave them the thing and everything else. But I had to deal with them. I had Jimmy Rivera, a Hispanic guy, worked my door. I had Hispanic doormen. One of them, Will, who played me for a sucker. He played me for a sucker. I found out from my friend Tom Selke, this Hispanic kid, I think he was Puerto Rican, but still Hispanic, he was a drug dealer. And he was, the nights that he missed, he was selling cocaine somewhere else. And so he became a doorman at my nightclub, Baja, to distribute cocaine. And then he would come, no show, no call. And he'd come in and, I have to, I have this soft heart. And he's like, oh, Michael, my mother died. Or, Michael, my dog was sick. Multiple times, no show, no call, a Hispanic kid. And Tom Selke and many others can testify. I gave him grace. And I didn't fire him. And I didn't need him. He wasn't a good doorman, per se. He was average. He was smiling and happy every time I saw him. But he worked the door to distribute cocaine throughout the nightclub. He became a doorman to sell cocaine. I didn't find out until after he quit. And I don't know why he quit. But all these people give me these sob stories. It's just like Bill. Here, I'll give you a white guy at the Marriott. He was my short order cook. My other short order cook was a Hispanic guy who used to constantly call me faggot. And he thought it was funny. I gave him grace. He was joking around, but I didn't get offended. I let it pass. It went in one ear and out the other. But these Hispanic people, and God watched, as I gave them grace, they come and attack me. And they called me all kinds of names and putrid stuff. And before I was in power and could have crushed them, I could have snapped their neck easily. Very powerful and gifted with fighting. I never needed to need weapons. I know I took weapon training, but I didn't use weapons because I could just do it with one blow. So I was very confident. So all these people have gotten away talking shit to me. Decade in, decade out. And so this is at the courtyard. And so, you know, he used to make me a special pepper and something, the Hispanic guy, and bring it to me. It was a good dish. Chicken and peppers and that. Green and red, different bell peppers and different spices. Wasn't something on the menu. But truly, I just let it slide. It was between me and him. And it's fine. But getting back to Bill, he was an alcoholic. I grew up taking care of my mother and father, alcoholics. I took care of Jimbo and other alcoholics, Kenny and many others at Baja. And I did take care of them, from Tom to Kenny. And I picked up on when they got drunk. And I took care of everything for them. I watched over them. And I had so much responsibility. It was incredible. All their stuff that they couldn't really do, I had to do. So getting back to it, Bill gave me a sob story too with his, you know, and my boss, who was a white female, she told me, fire him. And I protected him. He was in an interracial marriage. His wife was a good waitress. She was a black woman. And we got along great. They lived in Waukegan. And I hope Bill get into AA. Hope. But truly, and I talked to her, and I would keep him, and I would make up. And many times he did no show, no calls. And I would just do all the cooking. So I learned, I pulled the full menu, and I just moved to a buffet only. But it wasn't good for, you know, the clients. They come down and now it's only buffet. And I'm like, I do apologize. But my cook didn't show. And I didn't do it that way. But I told them that we had some staffing issues, and I do apologize, but it's buffet only. And it wasn't good for the people that were working. Buffet only. Because people left less tips with the buffet, because you're not bringing out the plates in that way. They're going up and getting it from the buffet. Now, you could make a buffet where they do a selection at the table, what they want, and they choose a portion size. You can do that now with tablets, and you can have a buffet, and the servers go up to the buffet and get the food from the buffet. Instead of you going to the buffet, the servers go to the buffet. And you just pick the portion size, what you want. You can go and look at the stuff on the buffet, but you can't touch anything. And then you sit back to the table, and then on your tablet, you select what you want from the buffet, and now the buffet is a full-service restaurant. The buffet is a full service, and you get to see the server take it right off the buffet. And so they'll plate it right there on the buffet and bring it to your table. And then when you're done eating it, you put the plate aside and you can order something else. So now you can have a full service buffet, and then the tips go back to normal. But it wasn't good for my servers. They were losing a lot of money, and I felt bad. So by saving him, I was hurting many others. So we would have been fine. We had another cook, it would have filled in until we hired somebody to replace him. But I took it on the shoulder, and she kept on telling me, why are you taking all that burden on you? And why are you doing your job and his job? But that's what I was taught to grow up with. I shackle all this burden, all the shortcomings around me. And Costa used to do it. He was a friend of mine. He has that kind of thing. And he would do it at Mama's Boy and that. And the waiter would come in and be, a little bit under, hungover. Or the busboys would come in a little bit high. And he'd tell them, don't come in hungover, don't come in drunk, don't come in high. But he would help them out. He would do all his stuff and help them out with all their stuff. Because he wanted clients to come back. Because if he doesn't help them out with their stuff, those clients get a bad impression. And he never got credit for that from the manager or any of that for his teamwork. Because what happens is you have to pick up the slack. And it's not fair, but he understood, pick up the slack, and that way the clients get a good impression, and they come back, and next time maybe they'll sit in my section instead of their section. But also, Costa was screwed by management, and some customers, unrightfully, tried to get him fired. And I watched, he did an excellent job. And 2 gay guys, in particular, tried to get him fired. Because he is anti-LGBTQ. And they tried to take the food. And now he's trying his startup business, Go Coffee Energy, and he's trying to make it. And he's busting his ass. And now I'm proud of him. He's got a job that he's got income coming in from Mama's Boy and everything else. And here are 2 homosexuals trying to take the food off his table. I mean, it's disgusting. So he helped them out, knowing that hopefully they have a good impression and they keep on coming back to Mama's Boy. They keep the lights on so he could keep a job. So in some things, I was doing things in my self-interest, but other things, it was altruistic, and how I went about it first was altruism. But also, it kept the lights on, and we set record revenue numbers. But again, this shouldn't happen. Why should I take on burden after decade after decade, taking care of drunks and alcoholics and all these people, and constantly I don't get to live my life? And God wants me to have a full life and live my life. Get rid of the scumbags and let Michael free. Free to run. Oh, and I'll post this on Tumblr. I looked up. So the tinnitus, it can cause problems with the inner ear balance. And also, the neuropathy that's in the balls of my foot causes a problem with neural feedback to the brain for balancing. So the tinnitus makes it harder for me to walk. The neuropathy makes it harder for me to walk. And then the shoulder, again, throws me out of balance because the brain doesn't get the proper balancing. And so my shoulder being impaired makes it harder for me to walk. So you're making me into a cripple. Every day, in every way, you're making it harder for me to walk. And then I looked at, rectum inflammation affects your balance. And inflamed rectum, now I have possible rectum cancer. And an inflamed rectum makes it harder for you to walk. So everything you're doing is making me crippled. And the TMJ with the teeth and everything, again, making me crippled, because that also affects the neural feedback, affects the inner ears, and affects my balance. So how many things are you going to do to me? How much are you going to desecrate my flesh? And then I get to walk, this kid walked perfectly across the street healthy. Why don't you do that to him? He deserves it. I don't. In comparison to me, he's filthy, disgusting piece of garbage. He deserves it. But you desecrate my flesh, and I get to drive around and watch all these people walk around healthy. It's unbelievable. And you keep on destroying my life, and then you have these people attack me and harass me on a daily basis. And you give these people peace and tranquility. Jen, she never got tailgated. All those years driving, my mother, she never had problems on the road. My brother John didn't either. My brother Carl. My sister. I don't even think my sister's ever been in an accident. Blair, all I know is he hit the deer once, but I don't think he's really been in an accident. And I don't think John has been in an accident. And I go through my nieces and nephews and that. So why am I experiencing all this negativity and they don't do any of the goodness I do? They do good things at times. They're not me. I'm right next to God and they're way down there. Still doing good things, but not me. So again, why should I get tortured? Because that's sure not a just and righteous world. So you do everything to impair me. And they get spouse and spouse. They get girlfriends. They get marriage. They get to have kids and raise a family and keep a career and everything else. And you keep on destroying me. So I don't get it. The St. Regis, one of the tallest buildings in Chicago. So why should I have that type of experience? Why should I suffer like that? When you give it to those that deserve less, you give them more. Look in the Bible. That makes you highly unjust. Because the Bible says you're supposed to live off the fruits of your labor. And if you're giving more to one, then you're taking from somebody else's fruits. We do this in taxes, income tax, and other taxes. And we take from the fruits of your labor, and that provides infrastructure and other things. And it provides certain services for those that are less fortunate. But what is less fortunate? A social safety net has a timeline. And you have so many time, like unemployment is a social safety net. You know that, right? They give 18 months. They extended it to 24. That's 2 years to get your shit in order and get a job. So, unemployment is a social safety net. Originally a year and a half, and then they extended it to 2 during the economic downturn when there weren't that many jobs. But now we have a job shortage. And I got off of unemployment during that. Oh yeah, do you know I started at MetLife in 2009? I went back to the financial service industry in the crisis. 2009, 8, 9, that was the crash and the crisis. I was working for MetLife. So I suffered through that. And then I suffered through 9/11 when I was working at GCG. And they were There was economic tragedy from 9/11, shutting down all kinds of deferred comp and so on and so forth. All the anti-money laundering came in and so on. And so because of these wrongful actions by these individuals, it made my ability to make money in financial service unbelievably difficult. And people said, you coming back from Vanguard and getting involved in financial service, and then we have 9/11, and then you go through your breakdown, and then you get back into the industry, and we have the downturn, the financial crisis in 2008, as you're re-entering the industry. Very difficult times to make it. And I worked my ass off. So, why should I feel bad for that piece of shit scumbag person? What did they do to change their life? And when they had all these downturns, what did they do to do things right? Truly, like this piece of shit. What did he stick himself in? Urban Ministries, Pacific Gardens? How did he help himself? My brother used to say, God loves those that help themselves. And he does. He likes when you ask for guidance. As he told me as a young kid, he wants you to do the fucking work. Just from him, guidance or consulting. You sweat equity. Go out there and bust your fucking ass. But them are sloth. This is in China, where you have 1.5 billion people, or India. This is America, 340. So reverse engineer that. So 3 times 5 is 15. So it's like 4 something times, or 4 times as many people. But we have twice the amount of wealth as China. And we have 4 times less people. And India, the same thing. So we have 4 to 5 times less people. And then we have 2 to 3 times the GDP, the wealth. So you tell me, why do we have this? How is this possible? Where I can understand them struggling in those countries, but here, I don't know why I see one bum. That's disrespectful for God. This is God's house, right? The house of the Lord. And they sit there and desecrate, and they're sloth in front of God as God watches them bear witness with their actions on a daily basis. And they sit there and sloth with his gift. You know, you give somebody a gift and then they turn around and waste it. And what does the Bible say? You're destined for eternal damnation. Jen, we used to talk about it all the time. So those bums are destined to be condemned. They're not going to be saved. They're going to burn. They waste the gift that God has given them, the opportunity. And I'm talking about in America. I just gave you the numbers. They have every reason not. And I talk to people from around the world. And I gave out all those handouts here showing all those different opportunities all over the place. And my friend Jean, here's a white woman who I met with Michael. Here's a white guy, both of them heavy, and they started marketing things where you would come to. That's where I met Julie Cho and my friend from France. She's awesome as well. But again, I met them at these networking functions. You pay to go. It's like speed dating, but it's only for networking. And you go to these functions to meet people, and they have a process that you go through. So you introduce yourself and what you do, and they introduce themselves. It's run like speed dating. And I met a lot of people, and that's how I met Julie Cho. She has an MBA from the University of Chicago. She was out there trying to get her consulting business going, Lock Consulting, that she did with her husband, Brian. And Brian is a full-time manager in Miami. I think it's somewhere in Florida, and he runs a manufacturing plant in Florida. And he flies out from Chicago, and he flies down to Florida to run the plant. And then he flies back here, and they also had a consulting company they were doing together. And then Julie did some marketing for martial arts and other things. And she was working very hard, and they have 4 kids. Working very hard at making ends meet. And she goes to early morning prayer 5 days a week. She wakes up at 5 in the morning and goes to church like I used to for early morning prayer. Not Bible study, just prayer. And she would do this at an Asian church. She went to Covenant, a white church in Chicago. She is one of the few Asians. But she went to church 5 days a week to pray first thing in the morning. She was there, she prayed, got out of there, went back home, and then her kids were getting up, and she would help them get ready for school and everything else. Wonderful woman. That's why I love her. But she'd get up early and go pray first thing in the morning, and then come back and take care of her kids and if her husband, and they were getting up. But she was already to church. She already did her morning prayers, and now it was addressing the family, taking care of the family and making sure everybody gets out the door in the right way. So I fell in love with her. It's her actions. And you say, righteous actions don't matter. What do you mean they don't matter? If she was a criminal, I would have hated her guts. I wouldn't have fell in love with her. I would have been disgusted with her. I fell in love with Jen the same way. Through her works. Her righteous works. She used to pay. Now, here's an Asian girl. And when she got out on Ernst & Young, she started sending money, some of her income, to a charity, and she became pen pals with a Latin female, a little girl in Latin America, and she had her picture and that on the fridge, and she used to send money to the charity, and the girl write her, and she'd write the girl, and taking care of the girl through the charity. And I was impressed at her altruism, doing this, taking on this little child, Hispanic little girl, helping support her, making sure she got the things she needed. As she was given much, she in turn gave. But not here. Latin America. Sylvia, Jen's friend, where did she go? She's a Korean girl. She's an Asian girl. She went down and worked for a charity in Latin America, helping less fortunates in Latin America. Carol Chen, Jen's friend, where did she go? She went down to Latin America, helping less fortunate in Latin America. They're all Americans. They were born here, raised here, but they're Asian. All Asian females. And they were helping the less fortunate in Latin America. So the Caribbean and Latin America is where femicide, you say, homicide of females is the highest in the world. And they have high rates of rape. And yes, fourth on domestic violence. But for extreme violence, they're number one towards females. So those girls, and they are girls, thank God, all natural female. Like I'm an all natural male. And they went and helped. And the funny thing is, they were down there helping where females get brutalized and murdered at the greatest rate. So those are very righteous females. Julie Cho is an Asian female, and she was running for our church urban ministry. And urban ministry helps black people. And she was an Asian female helping black people. So again, I was around all these righteous Asian females that had very good hearts and were trying to make the world a better place. And I was trying to make them stronger and wiser. So that's how I ended up falling in love with them, through their righteous actions. So I believe in sanctification. Whether you believe in Jesus or not, righteousness and justice matters for all people of the world. It is the most important thing. So again, we have to get it right. But I fell in love with them. What do you think God did with me? So, you're given agape love at birth, but God falls out of love with you when you're unjust and unrighteous. And he wants to punish you. That's the whole purpose of hell. So you bury yourself. God doesn't do it to you. You do it to yourself through your unjust actions. So the only one condemning yourself is yourself. So again, as I travel around Chicago, there's the B of A, Bank of America. They own a lot of real estate, but primarily on the West Coast. Here, West Coast. So they're Midwest and West Coast. Now you have, this is another topic, but then you have not Washington Mutual, but Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is kind of the reverse of Bank of America, in a way. They're West Coast dominated, moving to Midwest. Bank of America, kind of Midwest, moving to the West Coast. Both to diversify. Unlike Chase, East Coast dominant, moving to the Midwest. So I'm just telling you, when you're holding assets and they're a bank, you're not holding the same real estate portfolio. And I'm talking about their mortgage and commercial lending. So these aren't the same. Morningstar would look at them the same. Do you know that? Morningstar and the style boxes in that, they would look the same. Lipper, they would be the same in a way. But if you know truly how things are derived and where they're derived from, you realize they're not the same. And holding those banks, Washington Mutual, Wells Fargo, Chase, they could bring back Washington Mutual, but holding Wells Fargo and Chase and Bank of America, you're not holding the same thing. You're diversifying or hedging your real estate portfolio. Truly, they're lending into commercial and residential and their home equity loans and other types of lending. So you're diversifying. And Wells Fargo's a little different. Their security business isn't as robust as Merrill Lynch, which is Bank of America, or Chase, but it's JP Morgan is more on the mutual fund than it is in the wealth management. So Merrill Lynch has much more in wealth management. So again, they're not the same. So here's Citibank. It has a very big presence outside the United States, the largest of any of the banks, big banks. So again, when you're holding it, you understand what their presence here is, but also they give you a large hedge because they have big international exposure. But you have to know where that international exposure is. Where do they have their operations and what type of lending did they do? But everybody thinks that you can get a Morningstar and giving you the answer. No. Even their most sophisticated tools don't take away from me. They give you more detail and more insight, like their portfolio things and so on, but still nowhere near the way we tear it down, me and David used to. He's a banker. He's a bank consultant. And how we tore things apart. So just because they can put together something with e-money or a Morningstar portfolio, and do they really know what they're doing? How did they really know it? I'm like, hedging, how do they hedge, and so on and so forth. Truly, I have to look at funds and know, how do they hedge? Are they doing currency hedges? What type of hedges? I need to know how they operate. As I'm putting in the portfolio, I used to have SIA, used to love me talking to them. And the guy who runs their investment team, I forget his name, but we get along awesome. And he said, you can call me anytime you want. Anytime you want to call me, and he threw in, anytime you and David want to call me and you want to talk anything investment, I'm all ears. My phone is open. Call me anytime you want. And that's how much he thought of me and my investment insight. And he's like, I really want to hear what you think. But somehow I'm not active in that industry. So I keep on coming down here because I had great hope for Chicago. But Chicago keeps on bashing my hopes. And it seems the town wants to be a town of disgust and disgrace and filth instead of beauty. It's right here on the tip of the lake. It curves out. It has a great curvature. And I'll go down Lakeshore Drive, but you got to understand how the lakefront curves. It's critical to understand this, because what happens, you don't end up with the same view. Because if you go down south, and we'll go down south now, I'll get on the drive, and this is running a little long, but I'll show you how it curves out. And that means buildings far down south can get good views back of the city. So they get less obstructed. So that makes the real estate down south, as it bends out into the lake, as it curves the lakefront inward, because it's coming to what? Its corner. Like down there by Hammond, Indiana, and it bends around. That's the end of Lake Michigan. And then it bends all the way around and goes up, starts going straight by Michigan. So that whole curvature gives a great view back on the lake. Very valuable real estate. Very prime for good development. Yeah, like the Michael Reese. They can build beautiful, like they had the apartments on the beach in Crime 101 with the beautiful views. Well, yes, that can be Michael Reese in them. So you have to understand that there can be very good things. And controlling my bladder is one of them. But again, I'll just show you the curvature, and then I'll use the Lakeshore Drive to go back north so I can go to the bathroom, as we're already at 4:40 in the morning. So again, I thought the city was trying to move to be something beautiful. And when I came back from Arizona, Mayor Daley with his graffiti squads, I gave him credit. He had these squads out every day removing any graffiti in the city. And then he had the street cleaners out, and he made sure the airports had clean bathrooms and everything, making sure we make a good first impression of people that are just stopping over in O'Hare or Midway or coming into the city of Chicago, that they have a good first impression. And so he had the street cleaners. He was big at planting all these planter boxes, planting flowers and making it beautiful. I'll drive by the University of Chicago. Right downtown, the Gleacher Center. But you think the University of Chicago would understand this. The greater the downtown Chicago, the Gleacher Center, the more people want to go. Some moron behind me, it says left on green arrow only. But me know speak English. Me know read English. You can't get a driver's license if you can't read and speak English. Because if they can't read left on green arrow only, they can't get a driver's license. So no immigrant can get a license unless they can read and speak English. He's a Hispanic guy behind me. So you can't have him. Me know speaking English. Me know reading English. Well, then that means you give them a car and you put everybody at risk because they can't read the signs. So again, They have to read and speak English. No exceptions. And there's a lot of Latin American countries that speak English. So we only want those that want us and want to comply and assimilate. So again, went by the University of Chicago, Tower Espresso, booth, University of Chicago MBA. That's what Jennifer Kim has. That's what Julie Cho has. That's what Anne has. Another Asian girl works for Charles Schwab, who I have a crush on. But they all come from the University of Chicago MBA program. Different undergrads, I think, but all the same grad school. And indirectly, I think they all know each other too. But again, I used to hang out with lots of University of Chicago and Northwestern graduate students. But again, this is a long video, but I want to show you what I'm talking about, because when you're looking at this, you have to look at the curvature of the ocean, the waterfront, to see what the views are. And this is the point that in New York City, you're looking to see what type of views they have of the coastline. Not only seeing out in the water, but actually views of the coastline right and left of them. See the buildings in front of me? They're in front of me, right? That means this drive here is bending to the right, and then it's in a loop around to the left. So this is the curvature of the coastline. And so now it starts straightening out, right? And those buildings that seemed a little bit more left now are much more right. The perspective changes because the bend of the coastline changed, which changed the bend of Lakeshore Drive. And these are viewpoints, what they can and can't see from their position, what you can and can't see of them looking at them from the different positions back there. And so the reason that in the city or other places, like Sharon Stone, she owned a place right behind Lowe's Ventana Canyon on a cliff edge. And she could see all of the resort and over the resort, and she had a great view. And it was a remote access, one house on the edge of a cliff in Tucson. She has a beautiful residence. And now, this is where I learned from security. People at the resort would know she was in town. Why? Because when the lights went on at night, because when she wasn't there, it was black all the time, no lights on. And when she was there, the house would be lit up at night. But also, it's a security problem for her. So somebody can know when she's home and when she's not home. So what do? Part of ADT is they turn on lights and they turn off lights. That's house automation. And so people see lights going on and off and they don't know. Is she there? Is she not? It looks like somebody's home. People are less likely to go rob Sharon Stone's house. Truly. So, lights on in the house, like they show in Home Alone. He turns on the lights and they're dancing in the front room. Well, the robbers don't want to go into the house because people are not supposed to be home. There's supposed to be no one there. They're supposed to be gone. They thought all these people left, but he tricks them. He actually stood behind, but the whole point is, it's true how he deterred the burglars. Because they thought the house was empty and they were on vacation. So even that movie with John Hughes tells people who are watching people's habits to see when they were in town and when they were out of town. And when they were out of town, the wet bandits in the movie would rob them. And so they robbed the houses when people went out of town. So it tells you that in Home Alone. You think Facebook would know that? When people show they're out of town and all of a sudden they get robbed. And a lot of people on Facebook were using the data to rob people. That they were out of town. So don't you think you have to have some type of, policing of social media and ethics and morals? I do. We had ISIS and all the terrorists recruiting on them and criminal organizations using them in all kinds of ways. So here's Lakeshore Drive. It's pretty straight here. But we'll go a little bit further down. And so you have all this lakefront. And so this goes down all the way to Hyde Park. This is all Chicago. And I'm heading down towards the main campus of the University of Chicago in Hyde Park, where Barack Obama used to teach at the University of Chicago. He went to Harvard Law, but he taught law at the University of Chicago, if people don't know. So he was a teacher at the University of Chicago. And then he got into politics. He met his wife at Harvard. She went there. So, again, it's interesting when we talk about this. You think he would be going into the black community and offer legal aid. Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, offering up legal aid services into the black community as a charitable foundation, helping to establish, things like, proper real estate chain of title, custody of land down south. That chain of title might be inappropriate, and so on, that there might be due reparation because their family was cheated out of the land. Remember, the land can never be taken away from you through illegal means. So, because it's so long ago, they don't give the land back, but there would have to be some sort of settlement, and maybe it comes from the state because they allowed the deeds to be entered in the state and the land to transfer, and the state is supposed to stop any fraudulent transfer. So it's not per se coming from the landowner. It would come from the state, county, and local governments and their failure to do their due diligence on who properly that land was properly titled to. So I said that 14 million acres of land the blacks left. Now they abandoned, and you would have to segment that out if they abandoned the land. But if the land was taken from them fraudulently, then they would be due reparations. This I believe in. It's the same thing if something happened to the American Indians or white family or Asian family like David. he had his land, his family's land taken away from him, his ancestors, illegally by the U.S. government. And then when they let him out of the camps, they didn't give him fair market value. That's why I use eminent domain as a benchmark precedent, that the government must give you fair market value or a little more. Why a little more? Because they got to cover relocation cost. Truly, why do they have to give you a little more, really, just above fair market value? Because they're taking the property, but they have to pay for the relocation cost. So they have to give you more than fair market value to offset the cost of you moving. Since they're taking the land out from under you, they have to give you relocation costs. They have to cover the relocation cost. And maybe employment or other costs that might be part, and that's all part of the relocation if they eminent domain land. But these things, I believe, should be done. But slave reparations, I am not for. They got that reparation as a chance to live. It wasn't handled in the best of ways. Neither did black people when they were holding white people. So, again, I believe in that form of reparation. If there's land, there things that they were cheated out of, then like this shit, driving all over the road, the ghetto something thousand. But again, let's get off at here. This isn't a push me into Hyde Park, but I'm gonna stay on. See how the drive bends? University of Chicago, 1 mile. But I wasn't really trying to come by the University of Chicago. But again, do you see how the lakefront bends? This is all prime real estate. And they have the University of Chicago and not too far from Indiana. And so I'm not against the Bears Stadium going to Indiana, but what are we getting in return? What is Indiana giving to the state of Illinois to make up for the loss of the professional franchise? So I'll get off here, but this bends around, and here's the Museum of Science and Industry. And we can go down that. But you think black people would be in here, right? Since this is their neighborhood. All these black people down here, you think they would be visiting, and Science and Industry would have educational courses working with the University of Chicago, doing community education, small business education, teaching them science behind their industry and their industry, the history and everything, the structure of their industry, where it was, where it's going, and the different sciences that are involved in their industry. Science and industry. Every industry, like the food industry, has food science. So you think black people who want to build businesses, who want to build industries, would be using this, and they could teach black youth to... There's white people that live down here, and I think some Hispanic, but primarily black people. And you think what God gave them and what's been here, you think they would be regulars to science and industry. Because, again, they learn the industry history and all about it, where it was, where it is, where it's going. That's what they should be talking about, trends in industry. And then they learn all the science involved in each of the industries. I went down, I think it was here. Did they have the coal mines? It was here, not the Field Museum. And I forget who had the U-boat when I went on the German submarine. I went on the U-boat, and we got to walk on the U-boat and everything. It was parked on Lake Michigan, an actual German submarine from World War II. And I realized that people could only be so tall. I was too tall. I had to bend down a little bit. And so people are more like 5'6" in that were on the U-boat or something like that. And they had all these batteries under these steel grates and sleeping quarters and that. And think about being on that U-boat in the middle of the ocean. You had to be pretty brave to be on those U-boats. Truly. To be under the water on those U-boats. But I don't know how many people have physically been on a U-boat. But I've physically been on a U-boat, been around Sherman tanks and others. And big difference between what we have now and what they had then. But again, you're down here and you think, wow, that they have, God has given them all this opportunity and given them this incredible land, and you think, I've been talking to black realtors and black leadership, and I'm like, God has given you so much and you're squandering it, and then you cry poor mouth, and it disgusts me what you're doing with your management, your stewardship. The aldermen down here, like Jesse Jackson Jr. and all that, he could have done so much. This is the Barack Obama Library. How is the Barack Obama Library tied into the Museum of Science and Industry and tied into the University of Chicago? And how is it furthering the black community? Since it put it down here in Michelle, she's full black. From both parents are black, from my understanding. But Barack, he's a mulatto, half black, half white. But again, that's one thing that I thought had great hope, that since he was a mulatto and he understand both sides. I used to talk to mulatto couples and then kids that are mulatto, and they're supposed to get the understanding from both worlds. That's how I was going to raise my child, understanding Caucasians and understanding Asians, as I was preparing to marry Jen. And I was going to send them to Korean school and get them involved in Asian culture, but also European, my Scandinavian heritage, and understanding my culture, where I came from, and so on. And then how my family came and arrived here, Ancestry.com, kind of. But I wanted him to be educated on his two sides. I mean, any parents have two sides. His heritage and lineage, and your heritage and lineage. So if you're talking me, I would have Jen's heritage and lineage. My child would have, and my heritage and lineage. So, and educate him. I had this all prepared out. She didn't know how extensively. I never shared it with her, but I did lots of research and I prepared out. Here, it says the home right here. The home court at the Obama Presidential Center, and it's on Stony Island Avenue. But my thing is, how do you think it looks for black people that have all these homeless people walking around. And now it's black people. Have you ever seen an Asian bum? And I've even been to Los Angeles. And do you know what I saw in Los Angeles? I ran into mainly black bums and white bums. Some white females, some white males, but majority black, not even a lot of Hispanic bums. Some but few. Majority here in Chicago, black bums. Los Angeles, black bums. So you think Obama would be focusing on developing them and doing more of the Martin Luther King, where integrating them in